The old gods are dead, and it is time for a new pantheon to arise. As a wizard king, it is your destiny to travel across the astral sea in search of new worlds to conquer and claim. But be warned, there is competition for the throne of the gods. Only the most ruthless will be able to claim immortal power. Age of Wonders 4 is a turn-based strategy game. Like previous games in the series, you play as a powerful wizard, the leader of a fantasy kingdom full of monsters and minions who will raise an army to conquer the land. The game plays out over a series of campaigns. At the start of each campaign, you're allowed to choose what type of map you would like to play on, as well as what faction you would like to control. Once you've made your selection, you'll start on a randomly generated map in your throne city. From there, your goal is to use your armies to expand your base of power. You can either send units out to explore the nearby area in order to find suitable locations where you can build new cities and expand your territory. The map is filled with wild animals and neutral armies, and you'll often need to get rid of them in order to collect new resources. As you explore, you'll also encounter other enemy factions, and you can either use diplomacy to trade and make deals with them, or use your armies to conquer their cities and claim them as your own. When a battle begins, the game switches over to a tactical map, where you'll be able to move and position the units in your army in turn-based combat. Different units have different special abilities, such as being able to fire arrows, or cast magical spells, or being able to fly around the battlefield. And in addition to normal units, you can also recruit powerful heroes that will serve as the generals of your army. Defeating an enemy army rewards your units with experience points, and when they level up, they increase their health and their stats. As you expand your territory, your cities will produce gold, mana, and research points for you. Gold can be used to improve your city's economy or produce units to expand your armies. Mana can be used to either cast spells during combat or summon magical units such as demons and elementals. And finally, research points can be used to research new spells and upgrades for your faction. Now, Age of Wonders 4 is a little different from its predecessors. For starters, its kingdom management has taken some inspiration from modern 4X games. For starters, you no longer need dedicated builder units to found a city. Instead, you use hero units to construct outposts on an open territory, and then any outpost can later be advanced into a full-fledged city. In addition, cities themselves no longer have a static zone of control. Instead, they expand once their population reaches a certain level, and they claim a neighboring territory. These territories are then upgraded with specific districts that give them specialized bonuses, such as farms increasing food production and mines increasing gold production. These changes mean that city planning is now more robust, as any new cities you add, you want to make sure that they have plenty of territory that they can expand into. The game has also added new strategy elements with a kingdom skill tree. This skill tree is divided into several branches, with each branch offering a variety of passive skills that can change how your kingdom behaves. The Magic branch, for instance, will give you bonuses on researching and casting spells, while the Warfare branch will give you bonuses on defeating enemy units and recruiting soldiers for your army. But probably the most notable difference is the complete overhaul of the Magic system and how it now ties into faction customization. In previous Age of Wonders games, all of your magic was tied either to your faction or to a school of magic that you chose at the start of the campaign. This time around, they've divided all of the magical spells up into a series of different tomes. Each of these magical books contains 5 to 6 spells grouped around a specific theme. At the start of any map, you'll pick one of these books and the spells inside will be added to your research list. Then, researching those spells makes them available for you to cast. Where things get interesting is that once you research enough spells, you unlock the next tier of tomes, and where in previous games you would be stuck with whatever you chose at the start, in Age of Wonders 4, each time you choose a new tome, you can pick from whichever branch of magic you want. So, you might start off researching nature magic, but once you reach the next tier, there's nothing to stop you from selecting necromancy or chaos magic if you think that those are going to be more useful for your campaign. There's also a new category of magic. In addition to combat, enchantment, and summoning spells, there are now transformation spells as well. These spells, once cast, allow you to transform your faction, giving them customized powers and abilities. Different tomes have different options, and you can use multiple transformation spells over the course of a campaign, allowing you to turn your faction into plants or animals, angels, or even demons. So what's the good and bad of Age of Wonders 4? Well, for starters, the tactical combat is still really good. The turn-based battles handle really well, there's a good variety of maps, and there's a great selection of units to deploy. The game has a good balance between melee units, ranged units, cavalry, as well as a strong selection of esoteric units like wizards, skeletons, and elementals. Plus, you can still use powerful magics and customize and send your heroes into combat as well. Even siege battles are much streamlined this time around. There's no longer dedicated siege units, and instead defenders will use emplacements and attackers will use specialized siege tactics whenever there's a city battle. Empire expansion is also a lot easier to handle. There are no longer specific builder units, and instead, just using your heroes to found an outpost and then convert that outpost into a city is much more streamlined and straightforward. The new territory system also means that your cities grow more organically over time, and you can alter and even customize their production outputs. But the big selling point this time around is the new tome system, which I really enjoyed. Being able to pick and choose which magical spells you want over the course of your campaign gives you a lot of flexibility when it comes to defining your strategy. Not being locked into any one path means you're free to choose between generalization and specialization, and there's much less of a penalty for experimenting with your playstyle. Also, there's some strategic depth to it as well. Your tome selection determines what branches you unlock on the Empire skill tree, so there are both short and long-term gains to be had by picking specific paths. Also, the transformations just look cool and help reinforce the idea that your faction is growing in power and influence over time. Now, I do have one complaint about Age of Wonders 4, and it's tricky because it comes at the game from two directions. Basically, the pacing of the game is a little off, but I only noticed it at the beginning of a campaign and then again at the very end. At the start of each map, you're free to pick your civilization and choose whether you want to be humans or orcs or rat folk, but honestly, they all feel very similar. Mostly because, despite cosmetic changes, whether you pick barbarian humans or barbarian orcs or barbarian dwarves, a lot of your early units and abilities are going to be very similar. It's only when you get into the higher tiers of spells that you start unlocking the unique units and spells and abilities that make your faction distinct. Now, admittedly, this is a complaint that does fade away. Once you get past the first 10-15 turns of the game, you start unlocking the more advanced tomes, and the better elements of the game start to come into play. It's not until the very end of your campaign that things start to get repetitive again, and that's mostly because the victory conditions are all very similar. There are 4 basic victory conditions. Military is the most obvious. You just fight everyone else on the map until all of your opponents have been eliminated. Then you've got research and expansion victories, which sound like they might be different, but wind up being almost identical. In either case, you reach a certain progress point with your kingdom, then build 3 towers and fight everyone else on the map for 15 turns in order to establish your dominance. Then there's a score victory, which almost isn't even worth mentioning. Basically, at the end of 150 turns, if you have the most points, you win, which, if you've made any progress at all towards any of the other victory conditions, you'll probably complete by default. There aren't a lot of options, and diplomacy winds up feeling unnecessary since almost every one involves you beating up all the other players on the map. The only exception to this are the story mission maps, which will give you a quest victory condition where you have to complete a variety of objectives in order to win. In the end, I would give Age of Wonders 4 3 out of 4 stars, and my recommendation. It's a solid strategy game with strong tactical and customization elements. It borrows some useful elements from modern 4X games, and the tome system is a fantastic way to utilize its magic and empire progression systems. If you were a fan of the faction customization elements in Age of Wonders 3, then this is a good one to pick up because it provides even more of that. Alright, well, thanks for listening once again. Till next time.